I wanted to be candid and I wanted to just speak my mind out into a camera. And this time I would love to share why I hate critical race theory, period. You know how at the end of The Prisoner of Azkaban, Harry completely believes that his father cast the Patronus charm against the Dementors while Sirius had practically died, and only to find out that after him and Hermione had used a time turner, that in fact it was him that saved him from the Dementors. I kind of feel like I'm coming to a point where I expected some sort of hero to fly out of the sky and explain away critical race theory for the whole world. But as it turns out, I do not have a superhero, and I kind of just have to take the hit and say this myself. This is my own personal opinion that formed out of my own personal vacuum. I have not been paid by any establishments to decree that critical race theory is bad. I am just personally fed up with a hypocritical ideology. I just want to put it plain and straight. That's why I feel so prompted to make this video, because a lot of schools of thought have come and gone, but nothing has had the impact and is trying to make the permanence in society as critical race theory. Now, I do want to emphasize the last bit. It is a theory. Not everyone embraces it. Not everyone takes it as fact, but the major megaphones of this movement are forcing people to accept it as fact. Sectors that I really want to speak about right now are the diversity and inclusion industry, where we're having all these specialists come into workplaces and into schools and perpetuating this mentality that really is only just a theory about race, but it comes from a postmodernism background, and then forcing it down people's throats as truth really just kind of gets my blood going. So I wanted to just explain why I personally hate it. I want to exercise my freedom of speech while I still have it, and allow myself to just air out all these things that are just clouding my mind, and I literally kind of can't take it anymore. So the first thing is that I hate critical race theory because I hate racism. I'm not shunning critical race theory because I'm like skeptical of the existence of racism or that I do want to support the KKK. Absolutely not. And one thing critical race theory for sure does is that it brings back racism like a little cycle. It says that in order to remove race, we must elevate and emphasize race even more. I laugh at terms like anti-racism because it really all is just about remagnifying the concept of race. And then we're shunning people who, not even shunning, but ridiculing. I'm sure you'll ridicule me in just a second when I say this word, but we're ridiculing colorblindness. When really this whole race thing started when an individual decided that based on the physical trait of skin color, certain groups of people are better than other groups of people. But now we're taking that and we're saying, let's keep those distinctions sacred and uphold them and emphasize them, and in fact, give these physical traits irreversible, irremovable qualities that you must adhere to like some sort of religion, and you must dance around all these things if you see someone of a certain skin color, and there is nothing that can do away with those differences. Not an erasure of history, not any repentance in the present time. There is absolutely nothing you can do to remove the distinctions between black, white, or any other race group that there is. So that's the first reason that I hate critical race theory, is it really is this mental gymnastics that just gets you thinking about race more than ever. And then the other thing that really gets me going is you can't forgive and you can't forget. I totally lost my train of thought. I just get so riled up when I get into talking about this. But I think my main point is that we have these terms and then we shun colorblindness, which should really be equality, talking about equality regardless of skin color. Some people act in this and then they say the opposite thing, which is that you cannot say that a black person is equal to a white person. You want to bring in all these factors of history. And when are we going to break the cycle where we actually uphold the teachings of Martin Luther King Jr., for example, that we're not judging people based on the color of their skin, but the content of their character? Like, when are we going to get to that point? Because if we keep talking about everything that was done to us in the past, oh yeah, that's right, I was going to talk about forgiveness. There is no room for forgiveness. If we cannot forgive and we cannot forget, are we not always going to be literally just bound to the past? And in the past, that was when the most oppression occurred. So you're literally time transporting oppression that didn't even belong to your generation onto you and using that as a sort of a scapegoat, let's be honest, for the reasons everything is wrong in the world. And then you will not forgive. You will not let it go, when in fact, forgiveness and letting go is probably the only thing that will allow you to move forward in this battle of race. All right, now I'm not trying to get too heated, but I do think it is absolutely important that we're not shutting off the discussion of forgiveness as it relates to race. It's one of the reasons I had some live streams last year, and it's probably one of the reasons I am probably going to have some more live streams, is because whenever I brought the topic up, it was like, well, Kimmy, you haven't experienced racism, and honestly, how stupid does that sound? It sounds stupid to me, if you ask. Anyway, I digress. Now I want to talk about postmodernism and the hypocrisy that exists within postmodernism. The fact that we're dealing with a school of thought that says, morality is relative, and then you want to have these definite, immovable rules and sort of form your own religion while saying that religion is the opiate of the masses, I think is absolutely hilarious. And anyone who calls themselves super anti-religious and absolutely adheres to all the principles of critical race theory and postmodernism, again, you're exposing either that there is an inherent invisible moral standard existing in the globe, that's why we kind of can't escape that leveling of the field and the fairness between groups and judgment, and you stole my orange, so give it back. Or you're also just exposing the fact that the postmodernism movement can't be the be-all, end-all of judgment and immovable laws, irreversible laws. Does that make sense? If it doesn't make sense, rewind and watch that again. But the last thing, and this is why I hate critical race theory, is that it is founded on a school of thought that believes you can make up your own rules. You can have your own freedom of action. There is no consequence to sin, and there is no consequence to wrong decisions. But also there are absolutely consequences for thinking like not us, for not thinking like us, for not doing what we tell you to do, for not loving everything that we tell you to love and hating everything we tell you to hate. It is just a really, really interesting little bubble of hypocrisy. But it's no longer cute. This is destroying society. It's getting to the point where you can't really have a conversation. You are dancing around topics. You're tongue-tied in a very literal sense. And I'm not saying that we should now just go be offensive, and I'm not advocating for that. My meatloaf is ready, 1 second. But what I am advocating for is realizing that there is not one homogeneous, not even sure if I'm using the right word, but there is not one mode of thought for issues in the world, and especially when it comes to race. Black people are not just like all experiencing the exact same thing at the exact same time. We're individuals as well. We have our own views, thoughts, opinions. We have our own backgrounds, histories, advantages and disadvantages. I'm not from America originally, but I've lived in Los Angeles for 8 years. I have lived in South Africa, Uganda, and Tanzania, and Rwanda. So imagine that, how that impacts my perspective of the world, as opposed to someone who grew up in England and Nigeria. They have a different outlook, and they have had different interactions with different people. So I'll wrap this up real quick because I don't want this to go too long. But allow people to have different schools of thought that differ from the thought of critical race theory. And don't forget, it is still just a theory. It is not absolute truth, and it is not absolute fact. Thank you.